My parents destroyed my first startup and gave its clients to my sister, but when my $940 million cybersecurity empire made headlines, Mom texted, "Family dinner, no excuses." I walked in with, the first company I built had 12 clients in a shared office above a tire shop on Fletcher Avenue. I was 25. The desk was a door laid across 2 filing cabinets because I could not afford a real one, and the server rack sat in the closet next to the water heater where it overheated twice a month. Becker and Marsh were my first contract. $800 a month for network monitoring and quarterly audits. I filled out their intake form by hand because the printer was jammed and my handwriting covered every line of that page. There was a coffee ring on the back from the mug I was holding while the ink dried. I remember the weight of that mug and the way the paper curled slightly at the edges from the heat. That intake form was proof that something real had started. Within 6 months, I had 12 clients paying a combined $14,000 a month. It was not a fortune, but it was mine. Every dollar earned from cold calls and free consultations and showing up at business parks with a laptop and a pitch I had rewritten 40 times. The office still smelled like rubber from the tire shop below, and the ceiling tiles had water stains that changed shape when it rained. But the company was growing, and I was building something with my own hands. Then my parents got involved. My father, Richard, sat me down at his dining table on a Sunday afternoon in October and told me of Vanessa, my older sister, needed work. She had an MBA from a mid-tier state school and a resume that looked better on paper than it performed in interviews, and she had been unemployed for 4 months. He framed the suggestion as practical. "She is your sister, Ethan. She has the business degree. You have the technical skills. Put her in the office. Let her handle the client-facing side, scheduling, invoicing, communication. You focus on what you are good at. She covers what you are not." My mother, Marianne, nodded from the kitchen like the decision had already been discussed between them before I arrived. I asked Vanessa if she was interested. She said, "I think I could bring a lot to the table." She meant the client table. I thought she meant the work. Vanessa started on a Monday. She was professional for the first 2 weeks. She answered phones, organized the filing system, set up a shared calendar for client calls. On the 3rd Friday, I left the office early to run a security audit for a new prospect, and when I came back the next Monday, the printer tray had a stack of warm pages sitting in it. Vanessa had printed the entire master client spreadsheet. Every contact name, every contract term, every billing cycle, every renewal date, every email address, every phone number. She had printed it, taken it home, and the copy she forgot in the tray was the duplicate. She did not even try to hide it. I told myself she was being thorough. I told myself she needed the information to do her job. I was 25, and I still believed that family members who worked in your office were working for you, not studying you. 3 weeks later, my father called all 12 of my clients personally. He used his name and his 30-year reputation as a local business owner, and he told each one that Ethan's firm was restructuring and that Vanessa's new company, Ashford Digital Solutions, would be handling their accounts going forward. He called them one by one over a Saturday and Sunday while I was at a friend's wedding 2 hours away. By Monday morning, my phone had stopped ringing. By Wednesday, 3 clients had sent formal termination emails. By the end of the month, every single one had transferred. My mother, Marianne, handled Vanessa's bookkeeping from the very first invoice, setting up the accounting software before Vanessa's company even had a registered domain name. I confronted my father at the same dining table where he had pitched me on bringing Vanessa in. He stood by the kitchen counter with his arms crossed and said it to my face. "You are running a toy business out of a closet above a tire shop, and you think you are an entrepreneur? Your sister has an MBA. She has the relationships. She has the presentation. You have a broken printer and 12 clients who could not tell the difference. Give her the list, Ethan. She will do more with it than you ever could." He said it like he was explaining gravity, like it was obvious. Like a 25-year-old who built a company from a door desk with no investors and no family money should be grateful that his older sister was willing to take what he had made. I did not give him the list. He had already taken it. The confrontation was a formality. The theft was finished before I walked into the room. The startup collapsed within 3 months. I could not replace 12 clients fast enough to cover rent, and the tire shop landlord gave me 30 days when I fell behind on the second payment. I spent those 30 days making cold calls from a list I had rebuilt from scratch, sitting in an office that now felt like a crime scene, pitching to strangers while the phone on the desk, the one that used to ring 8 times a day, sat there collecting dust. I closed 2 prospects, but neither signed before the eviction deadline. I packed my car on a Saturday morning. The office was already empty because most of the equipment had been leased in return. I took my personal laptop, a box of cables, and the clothes I kept in the closet for client meetings. The intake form was gone. Vanessa had taken it with the rest of the client files, and it was sitting in a cabinet in a company that carried her name on work I had built. I locked the door, left the key with the tire shop owner, and drove 4 hours to a city where I did not know anyone. Because staying in a town where my father's name was on the lips of every client I had lost was not something I could survive. I should have cut them off then. I know that. But I was 25 and broke and starting over, and the anger had not settled into clarity yet. It was still just pain, and pain does not give you a plan. It gives you distance. So I took the distance, and I waited without knowing what I was waiting for until the plan arrived on its own. I started over. I got a contract job at a managed services provider, doing network monitoring for $12 an hour, which was less than some of my former clients had been paying me per hour as a consultant. I saved for 11 months sleeping in a studio apartment with a radiator that clanked every 20 minutes and a window that faced a parking garage. I registered a new company, Caldwell Cybersecurity, and I began cold calling again from a folding table with a laptop in a pitch I had rewritten so many times. The opening line felt like a muscle memory. The first year I signed 4 clients. The second year I signed 9 more and hired my first employee, a part-time analyst who worked from his apartment. By year 3, I had an actual office, a team of 6, and a contract with a regional hospital system that doubled my revenue overnight. By year 5, I had NOCs, government contracts, a SOC operations center in a building with my name on the lease, and a client base that stretched across 8 states. By year 7, when a national cybersecurity firm made an acquisition offer, I had 94 employees, operations in 12 states, and annual revenue that would have taken my father 3 lifetimes to match. The acquisition closed at $940 million. My personal stake, after 7 years of dilution across funding rounds, came to $47 million. The headline ran that evening on 3 business outlets and a cable news segment that ran my company photo beside the acquisition price in white text on a blue banner. By 9 that night, my phone was full of messages from people I had not heard from in years. College classmates, former coworkers from the managed services provider, a vendor I had used in year 2, all of them warm, all of them genuine, and then sandwiched between a congratulations text from my first analyst and a LinkedIn notification I did not care about, there was my mother. Family dinner, no excuses, not congratulations, not I am proud of you, not a question mark or an invitation, an instruction, delivered in the flat declarative tone she used when she told me to let a Vanessa into the office 7 years ago, and when she called me a month later to ask why I was making this harder than it needs to be after the clients left. I read the text twice and set the phone on the nightstand. I had not been to that house in 7 years. I had not spoken to my father since the dining table confrontation. I had not spoken to my mother since a phone call in year 2 of the rebuild when she asked if I was still upset about the business thing, and I told her I was not upset, I was gone, and she said you will come around, and I said nothing, and the call ended. I had not spoken to a Vanessa at all. They did not reach out when I was sleeping in a studio apartment with a radiator that clanked. They did not reach out when I signed my first client in the new city or my 10th or my 50th. They reached out when the number on the screen had enough commas to justify a Sunday dinner. That is not family. That is an invoice, but I was going to go because I had something to bring. If you are new to this channel, subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. I almost did not answer her text. My thumb hovered over the delete button for a solid 10 seconds. Then I reread it. No excuses. She did not write when you have time or if you want to. She wrote it like a summons. The same woman who watched my father gut my company and then set up the books for the replacement had the confidence to send me an order. That confidence told me something. She still thought the old version of me was operational. I need to go back 3 years to explain what happened next. When my company was in its 5th year, I got a phone call from a man named Harold Prescott. Harold was 62 years old, owned a small cybersecurity consulting firm, and had been my father's golf partner for over a decade. His company had just filed for bankruptcy. He was bitter and broke and had nothing left to protect, which made him the most honest person I had spoken to in years. Your father invested $80,000 in my company, Ethan. Cash personal savings. He did it the same month your sister started at your office. He told me he would redirect your clients to me first because my firm had the capacity, and yours was, in his words, too small to compete at scale. 3 of your 12 came through my firm. The rest he passed to Vanessa because I could not handle the volume. When my company went under, your father lost every cent. He never told your mother. He never told you, and he never called me again after the bankruptcy filing. I sat in my office with the phone pressed against my ear and the city skyline through the window, and I did not speak for a long time. Harold waited. He was not calling to help me. He was calling because bitterness needs an audience, and I was the only person who would understand exactly what Richard's $80,000 had cost. Why are you telling me this? Because I lost everything, and your father walked away like he had never been involved. He put $80,000 into my company, took your clients to feed it, and when the whole thing collapsed, he pretended he was never there. I want someone to know what kind of man he is, and I figured you already had a pretty good idea. I thanked him. I hung up. I sat with that information for 6 days before I told anyone, turning it over in my head like a stone I could not set down. My father had not destroyed my company out of love for Vanessa or belief in her MBA. He had destroyed it to protect a personal financial investment in a competitor. Vanessa was the overflow. The speech about the tire shop and the broken printer was a performance designed to make financial self-interest look like fatherly wisdom, and the investment returned nothing. Then I told Derek. Derek Whitmore was my COO. We met 4 years into the rebuild when he was freelancing cybersecurity audits, and I hired him for a 3-month contract that turned into a permanent position because he was better at the work than anyone I had interviewed before or since. He was 30 years old, precise, and the only person in my professional life who knew the full history of the first company because he had asked the right questions during his first week, and I had trusted him enough to answer without editing. When I told Derek about Harold's call, he sat across from me in the conference room for 2 full minutes without speaking. He was reading my face the way he read network logs, looking for the pattern behind the data points. So it was never about Vanessa. It was about $80,000, and Vanessa was the cleanup crew. She got the clients Harold could not handle, the leftover 9. Derek leaned back. He tapped his pen against the table once. Your sister's company, Ashford Digital. Their revenue has been declining for 18 months. I have seen their client retention numbers in the industry reports. They are losing accounts every quarter. I knew Vanessa's firm had peaked at roughly $2 million a year in revenue around year 4 and had been sliding since. The clients she had stolen were aging out of their original contracts, and without the technical infrastructure I had built into the service packages, the product had thinned into something generic. She was running on referrals and her father's introductions, and both were drying up. You could acquire it, Derek said. I did not respond for a while. The idea had been sitting in the back of my head since Harold's call, but I had not let it move forward because I was not sure whether it was strategy or spite. Derek watched me think. Through a holding entity, she would not know the buyer. Standard SPV structure, clean, legal. Your M&A team handles the paperwork. She signs. She gets paid fair market value, and every client she took comes back to the company they were stolen from. She will find out eventually. She will find out when you want her to find out. That is the point. That is what we did. 3 weeks before the $940 million headline, my M&A team structured the acquisition through a holding entity registered under a name that had no visible connection to me. Vanessa received an offer letter from what appeared to be a mid-market investment group consolidating regional cybersecurity firms. The offer was $2. $1 million, fair market value for a company with declining revenue and aging contracts. Vanessa's attorney reviewed the terms. Her accountant reviewed the terms. Everything was clean because it was clean. There was no deception in the paperwork. The only thing Vanessa did not know was the name of the person behind the holding entity, and she did not ask because the check was real, and the company was struggling and she needed the exit. She signed on a Tuesday afternoon in a conference room at her attorney's office. By Wednesday, the transition paperwork was filed with the state. By Thursday afternoon, every client that had been stolen from my first company 7 years ago was back under a roof with my name on it. The 12 accounts had shrunk to 8 over the years as some businesses closed or switched providers. But the ones that remained were the originals. They were mine before they were anyone else's. If you have been following this story, you know what is coming. Subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded if you want to hear how it ends. 3 days after the headline, I drove to Vanessa's office, my office now. The strip mall parking lot was half empty, and the sign on the glass door still said Ashford Digital Solutions in dark blue letters that were starting to peel at the edges. I had the key. The receptionist was not in yet. The hallway smelled like commercial carpet cleaner and old coffee, and the fluorescent light above the kitchenette buzzed at a frequency I could feel behind my eyes. The staff had been notified of the acquisition, but not of the buyer's identity. I had the key. I walked past the front desk and down a short hallway to the back office where Vanessa had worked for 7 years. The staff had been notified of the acquisition, but not of the buyer's identity, and the 2 employees who were already in looked at me like a stranger with a key, which is exactly what I was. Vanessa's desk was clean except for a small succulent in a white pot and a framed photo of her and our parents at some event I had not been invited to. Her computer was off. The filing cabinet stood against the wall. Gray metal, 3 drawers dented on the left side where someone had kicked it or dropped something heavy against it over the years. I opened the 3rd drawer. There was a folder labeled Original Clients in handwriting that was not mine. Vanessa's handwriting. I pulled it out and flipped through the tabs until I found it. The Becker and Marsh intake form, my handwriting on every line, my name at the bottom, the date 7 years old. I turned it over and there it was. The coffee ring faded to a light brown that was barely visible against the off-white paper, but unmistakable if you knew to look for it because you were the one who set the mug down. I held it for a long time. There is a specific feeling that comes from finding something you made with your own hands inside a place that was built on taking it from you. It is not anger. It is not satisfaction. It is recognition. The form knew it did not belong there. It had been waiting in the wrong drawer in the wrong office under the wrong name for 7 years. I almost left it. I stood there holding it and thought about sliding it back into the folder, closing the drawer and walking out. Let it stay in the archive of a company that no longer belonged to the person who stole it. Then I turned it over one more time and looked at the coffee ring, and I remembered the morning I filled it out. The mug balanced on the edge of a door desk. The printer jammed and humming. The water heater clicking behind the server rack in the closet. I could not leave my own handwriting in someone else's cabinet. I called Derek. He drove 40 minutes to meet me. When he arrived, I was sitting at Vanessa's desk holding the form. He looked at it, read the date, read the client name, and put his hand on my shoulder for 3 seconds. We are framing that. He did not say anything else. He did not need to. I put the form in a manila folder alongside the acquisition papers, sealed the envelope, and set it on the passenger seat of my car. The dinner was in 4 days. Day 7. The Caldwell dining room. I had not been inside this house in 7 years. The porch light was the same fixture my father installed when I was in high school. A brass carriage lamp that had been painted over twice. The front steps had been resurfaced. The mailbox was new. Everything else was the same, including the dining table visible through the front window, set for dinner like a stage arranged before the audience arrives. Marianne opened the door and saw Derek standing beside me on the porch. Her face tightened in the way it does when a room she thought she controlled suddenly has a variable she did not plan for. Who is this? My business partner, Derek Whitmore. He is staying for dinner. She did not argue, but her eyes moved to the manila folder under my arm and stayed there for a half-second longer than was casual. She said another place. Richard was already at the table in his usual chair at the head, and he stood when I walked in and extended his hand like we were meeting at a networking event. Like the last 7 years of silence had been a scheduling issue rather than a consequence. I shook it because refusing would have set the wrong tone for what I had planned. Vanessa was in the kitchen doorway holding a glass of red wine, and she smiled at me with the specific warmth of a person who has convinced herself that time heals things she never apologized for. Ethan, it is good to see you. Vanessa. Marian served roasted chicken and potatoes and green beans, the same meal she used to make on Sundays when I was a teenager, and the family still functioned like one. Richard poured wine. Derek sat beside me and said nothing, reading the room the way he read a security environment, cataloging exits and vulnerabilities. The small talk lasted about 12 minutes. Marian asked about the acquisition. Richard asked about the company structure, the team size, the client base, and every question carried the undertone of a man who was measuring something he wanted a piece of. Then he leaned back in his chair, wine glass in hand, and delivered what he clearly believed was a generous tribute. 940 million. Not bad for a kid who started above a tire shop. He said it like a toast. Like the tire shop was a charming origin story instead of the office he had emptied. Like the broken printer and the door desk were nostalgic details in a success narrative he was now claiming partial authorship of. Vanessa lifted her glass. Marian smiled. I did not lift mine. I set the manila folder on the table beside my plate and looked at Derek. Derek opened the folder. He read without inflection, without commentary, the way a person reads a legal filing into the record. 3 weeks ago, Caldwell Cybersecurity acquired a firm called Ashford Digital Solutions for $1 million through a holding entity. Ashford Digital Solutions was founded by Vanessa Caldwell 7 years ago. Its original client base consisted of 12 accounts previously serviced by Ethan Caldwell's first firm, which ceased operations after those clients were redirected by Richard Caldwell. The room stopped, not dramatically, quietly, the way a room stops when someone reads something that cannot be taken back. Vanessa set her wine glass down too slowly, like she was buying time with the motion. You bought my company? I bought back what was mine. Vanessa's hand moved to the stem of her wine glass and stayed there, gripping it. I did not know the buyer was you. The attorneys handled everything. The holding entity, the paperwork. I did not know. I know you did not. That was the point. She opened her mouth to say something else, then closed it. Marianne was looking between Vanessa and me, processing what Derek had read, running the timeline in her head. Richard had not moved. His face was still holding the expression it had worn during the toast, but the muscles under it had gone rigid. I reached into the folder and set the intake form on the table beside the acquisition papers. Becker and Marsh. My handwriting. The coffee ring faintly visible through the back of the page. This was in your filing cabinet, Vanessa. 3rd drawer. Folder labeled Original Clients. I filled this out when I was 25. In a room above a tire shop, with a broken printer and a coffee mug balanced on the edge of a desk I made from a door. Richard's eyes moved to the form. He did not pick it up. He looked at it the way a person looks at a photograph they forgot existed. Dad, why did you redirect my clients to Harold Prescott before you gave them to Vanessa? Harold Prescott's name landed in that room like a stone dropped into still water. Richard's fork, halfway to his mouth, stopped. He set it on the plate, and the metal against ceramic was the loudest sound in the house. His left hand dropped below the table and stayed there, gripping something I could not see. His mouth open. His tongue touched his lower lip. He looked like a man trying to remember a lie he had told so long ago he had forgotten it was a lie. Harold called me 3 years ago, Dad, after his company went bankrupt. He told me about the $80,000 you invested in his firm. You redirected 3 of my clients to him first because his company was the one you had money in. The other 9 went to Vanessa because Harold could not handle the volume. You did not destroy my company for Vanessa. You destroyed it to protect your own investment, and the investment returned nothing. Richard did not look at Marianne. He did not look at Vanessa. He stared at the salt shaker in the center of the table as if it was the only neutral object left in the room. Marianne leaned forward. Her voice shifted into the register she used when she believed she was the reasonable person in the room. You could not even keep a dozen clients when you were 25 years old. You needed your sister and you call it stealing. If those clients wanted to stay with you, they would have stayed. Your father helped you. He helped Vanessa. The only difference is she knew how to keep what she was given. Whatever you have now, you did not build it alone. Nobody builds anything alone. So stop acting like the world owes you a standing ovation for doing what Vanessa did with less noise. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I spoke, and I did not raise my voice because the numbers were louder than anything I could shout. 7 years ago, I had 12 clients. You called each one of them Dad. You used your name, your reputation, and you told them to leave me. You redirected 3 of them to Harold Prescott's firm where you had $80,000 invested. The rest went to Vanessa. Mom handled the books. Nobody asked me. Nobody told me. I came to the office on a Monday, and the phone had stopped ringing. You did not just take my clients. You took my first contract, my intake forms, my handwriting. You gave them to Vanessa, and she put them in a filing cabinet and left them there for 7 years. And when I built something from nothing, when I started over in a city where I knew no one, when I worked for 7 years until the company was worth $940 million, the first thing Mom texted was not congratulations. It was family dinner, no excuses. You did not have excuses when you gutted my company. I do not need your dinner. Vanessa's water glass tilted in her hand. She caught it, but a line of water ran down the side onto the tablecloth in a thin streak that spread into the fabric. Richard tried to regain the room. This is business, Ethan. You are making it personal. You called it a toy business. You called me a kid with a broken printer. You told me she would do more with my clients than I ever could. That was personal the day you said it. Marian opened her mouth to respond, but I was not finished. Mom, you said nobody builds anything alone. You are right about the first company. Dad contributed. He contributed the phone calls that killed it. I built the second one from a folding table in a studio apartment with no investors and no family and no phone calls from a father offering to help. That company is worth $940 million and your daughter's firm is a line item inside it. I looked at Richard, then at Marianne, then at Vanessa. You gave her 12 clients and she built a $2 million company. I started with 0 and built one worth $940 million. I bought hers 3 weeks ago. Nobody spoke. Derek closed the folder quietly. Vanessa was looking at the form on the table, at the handwriting that was not hers, at the contract for a client she had been servicing for 7 years without ever having earned. Vanessa's company is a subsidiary of mine now. Her clients, my clients from 7 years ago, report to my infrastructure team. The $80,000 Dad lost on Harold's firm is gone. I am not replacing it. I am not funding anything in this house. And the next time you want a family dinner, remember that the last time I was invited to this table, it was to hand over my client list. This table has cost me enough. I picked up the intake form and slid it back into the folder. Derek stood up. I pushed my chair back and we walked to the front door together. Marian sat with her hands in her lap, motionless. Richard had not moved since I said Harold's name. Vanessa was staring at the wet streak on the tablecloth where her water had spilled, tracing the edge of it with her fingernail, like she was trying to find where the line stopped. We drove back in Derek's car. The highway was empty and the streetlights ran over the windshield in orange stripes. Neither of us spoke for the first 20 minutes. I was thinking about Richard's face when I said Harold's name, the way the color left his jaw first and then his forehead, the way his hand disappeared under the table like he was holding himself in place. I almost softened the haymaker when I saw his face at that table. He looked old in a way I had not noticed before, smaller in his chair than the man who had stood by the kitchen counter 7 years ago and called my company a toy business. The dining room light made the lines around his eyes deeper than they probably were, and for a half second I felt something close to guilt. But then I thought about the tire shop and the door desk and the 12 phone calls he made over a weekend to erase everything I had built so that his $80,000 bet would not have competition. He did not soften when he picked up the phone. I did not owe him softness when I picked up the folder. Derek broke the silence. Becker and Marsh's renewal is due next quarter. 3-year option. Send the paperwork. Already drafted. 11 days after the dinner, Marian called. I watched her name on the screen for a few seconds before answering. Ethan, she said. Her voice was different now. Smaller. Your father wants to talk to you. I looked through the glass wall of my office at the team working below me. People who had joined me after the first company was gone. People who knew nothing about the tire shop, the door desk, the broken printer, or the 12 clients my father had taken from me. I already said everything I needed to say. I told her. She was quiet. Then she asked the question I had expected. Are you really never coming back? I looked at the acquisition papers on my desk. Ashford Digital Solutions was now a subsidiary of Caldwell Cybersecurity. The 8 remaining clients from my original 12 were back under my infrastructure. The company my sister had built with what my father stole from me was now part of the company I had built without any of them. No, I said. I'm not. She started to say my name again. I ended the call. Then I opened the Becker and Marsh renewal agreement, signed it, and sent it to the client. 3 weeks later, their contract was renewed for another 3 years. That was the last thing I ever did with anything my family had taken from me. I didn't get my first company back. I got something better. I built a second one they could never take.